You are not losing in life because you lack talent, intelligence, or opportunity. You are losing because your day begins like a servant's. Mornings are not neutral. They are a sorting mechanism. Every society, every hierarchy, every power structure quietly separates men in the first hour of the day. Before excuses, before noise, before witnesses. Those who seize the morning accumulate leverage. Those who drift into it are positioned to be used. Human nature is simple and ugly. Whoever controls themselves earliest controls others later. The man who wakes with intention is already ahead of the man who wakes reacting. Power does not announce itself with aggression, it announces itself with preparation. The uncomfortable truth is this: discipline is not about virtue, health, or productivity. Discipline is about rank. The world does not reward effort, it rewards visible control. When you fail to command your own morning, you broadcast weakness at a biological level. You teach your nervous system, and eventually the world, that you are responsive, not directive. Most people believe mornings are about feeling ready. That belief alone disqualifies them. Power is never granted to those who wait to feel prepared. It is taken by those who act, while others negotiate with comfort. Every morning there is a silent decision being made about you. Not by society, not by your boss, not by fate, but by your own behavior. Are you the one who sets conditions, or the one who adapts to them? This is why the masses hate mornings, but admire powerful men. They sense the truth instinctively. Whoever owns the morning owns the direction of the day, and whoever owns enough days eventually owns outcomes. You are not battling motivation, you are battling biology. And biology does not negotiate. Every morning, your body enters a brief window where hierarchy is biologically decided. Cortisol rises before you open your eyes, not to stress you, but to mobilize you. In primitive terms, this hormone exists for one reason: to prepare a creature to dominate its environment before something else does. When you waste that window, you do not relax, you submit. Dopamine sensitivity is highest early in the day. This means whatever you do first becomes the template your brain uses to decide what kind of person you are today. If your first action is consumption, distraction, or avoidance, your nervous system labels you as low authority. From that point forward, you will crave stimulation, not progress. You will chase relief, not results. This is why mornings feel heavy to weak men. Their brains have learned that waking up leads to surrender. The body resists because it anticipates loss of control. The primitive brain does not understand goals, ambition, or morality. It understands only patterns and outcomes. When you hit snooze, you are not resting. You are training your nervous system to disobey commands. Each delay reinforces a simple internal rule: your word does not matter. Over time, this erodes self-trust at a chemical level. Confidence is not a mindset. It is a biochemical byproduct of keeping promises to yourself under discomfort. This is why affirmations fail and rituals work. The brain does not respond to language. It responds to evidence. When you move decisively in the morning, before emotion, before external input, you provide proof that you are in charge. Dopamine is released not because you feel good, but because the system recognizes authority. Hierarchy begins internally. There is also perception. Humans are hyper-attuned to subtle cues of dominance and submission. Your posture, speech cadence, eye contact, and decisiveness throughout the day are downstream effects of how you started it. Men who wake reactively move through the world, slightly rushed, slightly uncertain, slightly deferential. Even if they hide it behind confidence theater, others sense it instantly. The nervous system cannot fake status. When you allow external forces to define your first hour, messages, news, obligations, you condition yourself to live in response mode. Response is biologically inferior to initiation. Predators initiate. Prey reacts. This distinction is older than language and immune to modern excuses. The reason successful men often appear calm under pressure is not temperament, it is preparation. Their mornings were quiet, controlled, and deliberate. Pressure feels lighter when your nervous system has already experienced dominance early in the day. Fear operates the same way. Fear is not caused by danger. It is caused by lack of preparation. When you do nothing meaningful in the morning, fear accumulates silently. By midday, it manifests as hesitation, overthinking, and avoidance. You mistake this for personality. It is not. It is debt. The body keeps score. There is also the issue of identity reinforcement. Every morning answers one question. Who am I, the kind of person who obeys? Weak men believe identity precedes action. Strong men understand the reverse. You do not wake up confident and then act. You act, and the brain updates the identity accordingly. This is why mornings are non-negotiable for power. They compress feedback. A single decisive morning trains authority faster than weeks of passive intention. Modern life is engineered to exploit this. Endless entertainment, notifications, comfort rituals, they are not accidents. They keep the population docile by hijacking the exact biological window required for dominance conditioning. A distracted morning produces a manageable citizen. A controlled morning produces a dangerous man. You were never meant to wake up comfortable. You were meant to wake up ready. And readiness has nothing to do with mood. Your biology does not care how you feel. It only cares what you do first. That is the mechanism. That is the truth. You don't need to be attacked for weakness. The system is far more efficient than that. It simply withholds reward. Weakness is no longer punished with force or humiliation. That would be crude and visible. Modern hierarchies are quieter. They starve you of leverage, drain you of options, and then convince you it was your fault. Strength, meanwhile, is rewarded silently with access, trust, tolerance, and opportunity that is never formally announced. This is how power actually works. Men who control their mornings enter the world already ahead in ways others can't consciously identify, but instinctively respond to. They speak less, decide faster, hesitate rarely, not because they are braver, but because their nervous system is not overloaded. They already won the first conflict of the day, the one with themselves. Everything that follows feels lighter because it is no longer resistance against chaos. It is execution. The system reads this as competence. Opportunities are not distributed fairly. They are offered to those who appear capable of carrying weight. Strength is not judged by morality, kindness, or intention. It is judged by consistency, predictability, and self-command. A man who cannot command his own body early in the day will never be trusted with authority later. He may be talented, but talent without control is liability. This is not cruelty, it is efficiency. Weak men believe the world should meet them halfway. Strong men understand the world does not meet. It selects. Every environment is filtering constantly. Who arrives prepared? Who reacts emotionally? Who needs reassurance? Who waits for permission? These judgments happen before words are exchanged. The morning answers these questions long before anyone speaks. If you wake late, rush, skip preparation, and enter the day already behind, the system categorizes you immediately. Not consciously, biologically. You are treated as someone who needs guidance, oversight, correction. Even when you perform well, your ceiling is enforced quietly. You are given tasks, not authority. Responsibility without power, motion without direction. And here is the part most people refuse to accept. This treatment is deserved, not morally, but strategically. Power flows toward reliability. Reliability begins with self-discipline. Self-discipline is proven only when no one is watching. Morning is the last remaining space where that proof is uncontaminated by performance or applause. Miss it consistently, and the system adjusts accordingly. This is why strength compounds and weakness decays. A disciplined morning creates surplus focus. Surplus focus produces cleaner decisions. Clean decisions generate better outcomes. Better outcomes reinforce authority. Authority buys freedom. Freedom allows deeper discipline. The loop closes upward. Weakness follows the same structure downward. Late mornings create urgency. Urgency degrades judgment. Poor judgment creates mistakes. Mistakes reduce trust. Reduced trust invites supervision. Supervision destroys autonomy. Lack of autonomy breeds resentment. Resentment drives escapism. Escapism erodes mornings even further. This is how men disappear without anyone noticing. The system does not hate you. It simply optimizes around you. Most people believe success comes from being noticed. This is a child's understanding of power. Real power comes from being depended on. Dependence is earned through consistency under pressure. Not charisma, not ambition, not noise. Morning discipline is the earliest and most reliable signal of that consistency. Watch men who rise quickly. They are not louder, they are calmer. They do not scramble. They arrive already positioned. That positioning happened hours before anyone else noticed them. While others were easing into the day, they were already shaping it. Meanwhile, the masses unknowingly sabotage themselves every morning and mistake it for normal life. They believe productivity begins after coffee, after scrolling, after warming up, after they feel ready. That belief alone keeps them subordinate. Readiness is a luxury position. Power is taken in discomfort. Those who wait to feel prepared are already late. They also confuse busyness with progress. They flood their mornings with noise, news, messages, opinions, believing information equals advantage. In reality, information without hierarchy creates paralysis. The mind becomes crowded before it becomes sharp. You cannot dominate an environment you have already let inside you. The system rewards men who enter the day empty, controlled, and intentional. Empty of noise, controlled in body, intentional in direction. Everyone else arrives already influenced, already reactive, already compromised, and then wonders why they feel behind by noon. This is not accidental. Modern systems profit from reactive men. Reactive men consume more, complain more, obey more. They are easy to steer because they never steer themselves. The earlier this reactivity is installed, the deeper it runs. That is why comfort culture defends mornings so aggressively. Sleep in. Be gentle with yourself. You deserve ease. These messages are not designed to empower you. They are designed to neutralize you. A man who wakes early, alone, and disciplined is difficult to manipulate. He has already faced discomfort and survived it. He is less impressed by incentives, less afraid of pressure, less dependent on validation. He is costly to control. Weakness is not punished with cruelty. It is punished with invisibility. You are passed over, overlooked, managed, tolerated, useful but not powerful, necessary but never respected. Strength is rewarded with latitude. People give you space. They trust your silence. They forgive your mistakes because they assume competence. This is not fair. It is functional. And it all starts earlier than you think. By the time the average man believes he is starting his day, another man has already stacked discipline, clarity, and momentum. From that moment forward, they are no longer competing on equal ground. One is building, the other is catching up. Most never catch up, because the system does not slow down for late starters. It simply keeps moving and lets them fall behind quietly. You are not sabotaged by external forces. You are sabotaged by habits you no longer question. The most dangerous mistakes are not dramatic or obvious. They are quiet, socially accepted, and repeated daily by millions of men who believe they are doing fine. Normal life is the camouflage of failure. Most men wake up and immediately surrender the most valuable resource they will have all day: directional clarity. They reach for stimulation before command. They allow input before intention. They begin the day consuming instead of creating, reacting instead of initiating. This is not harmless. It is submission disguised as routine. The phone is the first mistake, not because technology is evil, but because priority is power. The moment you allow another person's message, another institution's agenda, or another narrative to occupy your attention before you've established your own, you have declared hierarchy. You have placed yourself downstream. From that point forward, you will spend the day responding, adjusting, negotiating. You will feel busy but ineffective, active but not decisive. This is how men become exhausted without building anything. Another common sabotage is emotional negotiation. I'll start once I feel awake. I'll focus once I'm motivated. I'll move when I'm ready. These thoughts feel reasonable, even responsible. In reality, they are abdications of authority. The body learns quickly. Every time you wait for a feeling before acting, you reinforce the belief that feelings are in charge. Over time, your internal command structure collapses. Men who live this way mistake discipline for personality. They believe some people are naturally driven and others are not. This belief protects their ego while destroying their future. Drive is not a trait. It is an outcome of repeated obedience to self-issued commands. Miss enough mornings, and the system updates accordingly. You are no longer a man who acts, you are a man who delays. Then there is the illusion of preparation, endless planning, endless optimizing, perfect routines that never begin. This is intellectual procrastination, an advanced form of avoidance that feels productive while producing nothing. The mind stays busy so the body never has to move. Power, however, is built through friction, not theory. The system does not reward plans, it rewards execution. Many men also sabotage themselves by mistaking comfort for recovery. True recovery restores capacity. Comfort dulls it. Sleeping excessively, easing into the day, protecting yourself from discomfort may feel restorative, but it weakens your tolerance for stress. Over time, the threshold for action rises. What once felt manageable begins to feel overwhelming. You become fragile without realizing it. Fragility is punished everywhere. What most men don't see is the hidden leverage that mornings offer. Mornings are not just quiet, they are asymmetric. While others are unconscious, mentally and physically, you are accumulating advantage without resistance. No competition, no interference, no negotiation. This is how power is built efficiently. Solitude is a weapon. In silence, your mind stops performing and starts structuring. Decisions become cleaner. Priorities sharpen. There is no audience to impress, no noise to distort judgment. You are alone with reality. This is where operators are formed. Mornings also train obedience, not to society, but to yourself. Every deliberate action taken before comfort has a compounding effect. It conditions the nervous system to associate action with authority rather than mood. Over time, this creates an internal hierarchy where commands are followed automatically. You stop debating, you execute. This is the leverage most people never access. They think power comes from force, aggression, or dominance over others. In reality, power begins as predictability to oneself. A man who does what he says he will do, especially when no one is watching, becomes internally aligned. That alignment is felt externally. Others trust it before they understand it. This is the mental model most men are missing. The morning is not self-care. It is a daily coup against entropy. Chaos accumulates naturally. Order must be imposed deliberately. Each morning, the world is trying to pull you into reaction, distraction, and passivity. When you establish structure early, you spend the rest of the day defending it instead of building it from nothing. Rituals are not about comfort or identity aesthetics. They are conditioning protocols. Repeated actions performed under mild discomfort train dominance at a biological level. This is why they work even when motivation is absent. The system does not care how you feel. It cares what patterns you reinforce. Understand this clearly. Control precedes confidence. Confidence is irrelevant. It is a lagging indicator. Men who wait to feel confident never act. Men who act become confident as a side effect. The order cannot be reversed. This realization demands an identity shift. You must stop seeing yourself as a participant in your own life and start seeing yourself as an operator. Participants respond to conditions. Operators create them. Participants need permission. Operators assume authority. Participants wait for alignment. Operators impose structure and let alignment follow. This shift is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. You can no longer blame mood, environment, or circumstance. You either command yourself or you don't. There is no middle ground. You do not start the day. Starting implies readiness, ease, and consent. You seize the day. Seizing implies force, intent, and inevitability. One is passive, the other is decisive. One belongs to servants, the other belongs to rulers. Once this identity locks in, mornings stop being a struggle. They become non-negotiable. You no longer ask if you should act. You act because that is who you are. The question disappears. This is why truly disciplined men rarely talk about their routines. Power is most effective when it is invisible. Publicly shared habits are usually diluted, performative, and safe. Real preparation happens in silence, without validation, without audience. There are reasons for this discretion. The more you understand how mornings shape hierarchy, the more you realize why this knowledge is never emphasized publicly. A population that controls itself early is difficult to manage. A man who is internally ordered is resistant to manipulation. He requires less incentive, less pressure, less reassurance. He sees through urgency and ignores noise. Such men are dangerous to systems built on distraction. This is also why, once you see this clearly, ignorance is no longer an option. You either accept the responsibility of command or you accept the consequences of avoidance. There is no neutral position. Every morning is a vote cast for the kind of man you are becoming. Most will continue to drift. They will wake distracted, enter the day compromised, and call it normal. They will never know how much leverage they surrendered before breakfast. Others will choose differently, and those men will never announce it. They will simply arrive already ahead, calm, prepared, and impossible to rush. What comes next goes deeper than habits. It moves into access, discretion, and the quiet rules followed only by those who operate above the noise. This knowledge is never mass-distributed for a reason. It is reserved for those who are already willing to act without permission. You've now reached the edge where most men stop listening. Not because they disagree, but because what comes next demands a cost they are unwilling to pay. Understanding is cheap, execution is not, and power has always been expensive. At a certain point, habits stop being the issue. Strategy takes over. Once you control your mornings, you begin to see a deeper layer of reality that was previously invisible. You notice how predictable people are, how easily their emotions are steered, how quickly urgency makes them sloppy. This is not cynicism, it is pattern recognition sharpened by silence and preparation. Most men live exposed. Their thoughts are public. Their reactions are immediate. Their intentions are obvious. They broadcast weakness without saying a word. When someone controls their mornings, that exposure begins to close. You speak less because you think more. You react slower because you are already positioned. You stop volunteering information because you no longer need approval. This is where real leverage begins. Power is not dominance over others. That is crude and unstable. Power is asymmetry, knowing things others don't, seeing moves before they happen, having options when others have urgency. Morning discipline creates this asymmetry quietly. While others are burning energy just to stabilize themselves, you are already allocating resources. Time, attention, focus, restraint. Restraint is critical. Men who wake reactively leak energy all day. They over-explain. They overpromise, they overcommit. They are easy to exhaust because they never established limits early. A disciplined morning installs boundaries before anyone else arrives. By the time demands appear, you already know what you will and will not give. This is why powerful men are often mislabeled as cold. They are not cold, they are contained. Containment is threatening to people who rely on emotional access. When you are calm, prepared, and difficult to rush, others feel exposed. They reveal more than they intend. They push harder than they should. They show you where they are weak. This is not manipulation. It is gravity. Structure pulls chaos toward it. Once you experience this shift, you realize why most people resist discipline. It is not laziness. It is fear of responsibility. Control removes plausible deniability. When you are disciplined, outcomes are no longer abstract. Success and failure both point directly back to you. Many men prefer distraction because it gives them an alibi. But if you are listening to this, you already know avoidance is no longer an option. You feel the friction because your instincts recognize truth. Something in you understands that comfort has cost you more than discomfort ever will. At this level, mornings are no longer about routines. They are about positioning. You are deciding what kind of man enters the world each day. One who is available, pliable, and responsive, or one who is scarce, deliberate, and difficult to influence. Scarcity is power. When your mornings are disciplined, your availability drops. Not because you are busy, but because you are selective. You stop filling time to avoid silence. You stop agreeing to things that dilute focus. Others feel this immediately. Scarcity increases perceived value without you asking for it. This is why authority often arrives without announcement. People defer before they understand why. Another shift happens here. You stop seeking intensity. Men without structure chase intensity to feel alive. Drama, conflict, stimulation, chaos. Disciplined men seek clarity instead. Clarity makes intensity unnecessary. When you know exactly what matters, you don't need emotional spikes to distract you from confusion. Clarity terrifies people who live in noise. This is also why disciplined men are difficult to manipulate with fear. Fear relies on urgency and uncertainty. But when your mornings are controlled, urgency loses its grip. You've already faced discomfort voluntarily. Artificial pressure feels transparent. You see it for what it is, an attempt to rush you into a mistake. You stop rushing. This alone separates you from most men. There is a reason ancient strategists valued dawn, not for romance or poetry, but for advantage. Dawn is when environments are least defended, guards are tired, minds are slow, structures are vulnerable. Modern life is no different. The early hours are still unguarded, and whoever occupies them gains territory without resistance. Most people sleep through opportunity and call it fate. You don't need more time, you need uncontested time. That is what mornings give you. As this compounds, you'll notice something unsettling. People will begin to project onto you. Some will admire you, others will resent you, a few will test you. This is inevitable. Structure exposes disorder. Your presence becomes a mirror, and not everyone likes what they see. Do not correct them. Do not explain yourself. Power weakens when justified. Silence is part of the discipline. This is where the final distinction appears. Servant versus ruler is not about status or wealth. It is about initiation. Servants wait for direction. Rulers define direction. Servants ask what is required. Rulers decide what matters. Servants live in reaction. Rulers live in design. You cannot design your life if you begin each day reacting to it. This is why the morning is sacred. Not spiritually, but strategically. It is the only time you are uncontested. The only time the world has not yet made demands. Waste it, and you spend the rest of the day negotiating from weakness. Use it, and the day negotiates with you. Most men will never accept this. They will continue to look for hacks, shortcuts, and external validation. They will confuse information with transformation. They will wait for permission that never comes. A smaller group will act quietly, and an even smaller group will go further. Past habits, past discipline, into systems of leverage that are never discussed publicly. Systems of access, discretion, timing, and psychological positioning that separate operators from participants permanently. That level is not advertised. It is not broadcast. It is not meant for mass consumption, not because it is secret, but because it requires a foundation most people will never build. If you've understood what you've just heard, not intellectually, but instinctively, then you already know whether you belong there or not. The door is never forced open. It is noticed by those who are already prepared to walk through it. And preparation, as you now understand, begins long before the world is awake. There is a final layer most men never reach, not because it is hidden, but because it is uncomfortable to inhabit. Once morning discipline becomes automatic, once control is no longer fragile, the question is no longer how to act, but when and why. This is where power separates itself from effort entirely. At this level, you stop trying to prove anything. Proving is for insecure men who still need feedback to confirm identity. Operators do not perform. They position. They understand that visibility is a liability unless it is strategically chosen. The morning teaches this lesson quietly. When you act before witnesses exist, you learn the difference between progress and performance. Most men live as if they are always being watched. They announce plans, they share intentions, they seek affirmation before results. This creates dependency. The more you expose, the more you can be influenced. Silence, on the other hand, compresses power inward. It makes your actions harder to predict and your motives harder to manipulate. This is why discretion increases as discipline deepens. You begin to understand timing, not urgency, timing. Urgency is emotional. Timing is structural. When you control your mornings, you operate from a surplus of time instead of a deficit. This surplus allows you to wait. And waiting, when done from strength, is dominance. The man who can wait while others rush controls the outcome without force. Rushing is always a signal of weakness. This awareness changes how you interact with the world. You stop answering immediately. You stop committing impulsively. You stop reacting to artificial deadlines. People mistake this for confidence. It is not confidence, it is leverage. You are no longer synchronized with their chaos. Most people are governed by external clocks, meetings, messages, deadlines, alerts. Their internal state is constantly being reset by forces they did not choose. A disciplined morning recenters authority. You begin the day on your timeline. Everything else becomes negotiable. Negotiation favors the prepared. Another shift occurs. You stop confusing motion with direction. Many men stay busy to avoid confronting the reality that they are not moving toward anything meaningful. Discipline exposes this illusion quickly. When your mornings are quiet and intentional, there is nowhere to hide from the truth of your trajectory. This is why some men abandon discipline after a short period. Not because it is difficult, but because it is clarifying. Clarity forces decisions. Decisions create consequences, and consequences eliminate excuses. Comfort delays truth. Discipline reveals it. At this stage, your mornings are no longer filled with tasks. They are filled with alignment. You are not checking boxes. You are calibrating direction. You are asking one ruthless question. What actually moves the structure of my life forward? Everything else becomes secondary or irrelevant. This is where minimalism appears, not as an aesthetic but as a strategy. Fewer obligations, fewer distractions, fewer explanations. Power does not expand by accumulation, it expands by subtraction. Subtraction requires confidence in priority. You also begin to notice how rare this state is, how few men can sit in silence without reaching for stimulation, how many need noise to avoid themselves. This gives you an advantage that feels unfair because it is. You are competing against men who exhaust themselves before noon. Do not feel guilt for this advantage. Nature has never rewarded equality. It rewards adaptation. The final realization is this: freedom is not the absence of structure. Freedom is choosing your structure before someone else chooses it for you. Most men confuse freedom with flexibility. Flexibility makes you bend to pressure. Structure makes pressure bend around you. Your morning is the foundation of that structure. Once this is locked in, external chaos loses its power. Markets fluctuate, people panic, circumstances shift. You remain steady because your identity is no longer reactive. You have trained yourself to act without emotional permission. That is the highest form of independence available to a man. Independence terrifies systems built on compliance. This is why this knowledge is diluted, softened, and reframed as self-care or wellness. Power is made palatable so it does not spread intact. The sharp edges are sanded down. The intent is removed. What remains is harmless. but you now understand the original shape. Mornings are not about productivity. They are about sovereignty. They are the daily reaffirmation that you command your own body, your own attention, your own direction. Lose that, and everything else becomes cosmetic. Most men will never build this foundation. They will continue searching outward for answers that only exist inward. They will chase tactics without identity, motivation without structure, and results without responsibility. A smaller number will build discipline. An even smaller number will build leverage on top of it. Those men do not announce themselves. They do not recruit publicly. They do not explain their advantage. They simply move differently, choose differently, and are treated differently by the world. If you are still here, listening without resistance, then you already know this is not theory. Something in you recognizes the alignment. You feel the difference between information and instruction. What comes next is not for everyone. It is not meant to be. Access to deeper systems, timing, influence, and psychological positioning is reserved for those who have already proven they can command themselves in silence. There is no onboarding, no reassurance, no public invitation, only access. And access is granted to those who arrive prepared, long before anyone else wakes up. Once discipline becomes structural rather than forced, a quieter realization sets in. Most of what people call effort is compensation for disorder. They push harder because they start scattered. They hustle because they wake compromised. Their intensity is not strength, it is leakage. A man who controls his mornings does not need intensity. He has alignment. Alignment reduces friction. Friction is what exhausts people, not work itself. When you see this clearly, you stop glorifying struggle. Struggle is inefficient. It signals misalignment upstream. This reframes how you view other men. You begin to notice that most are not lazy. They are fragmented. Their attention is split before the day even begins. They wake already indebted to obligations they didn't choose. They spend their lives paying interest on decisions made half asleep. This is why they cling to distraction. Distraction numbs the awareness of misalignment. You no longer need to judge them. Distance is enough. Another shift occurs in how you relate to ambition. Ambition without structure is dangerous. It creates restlessness, comparison, and impatience. Structured men are not impatient. They understand sequencing. They know when to move and when to wait. Morning discipline installs this sequencing instinctively. You stop forcing outcomes. You prepare positions and let outcomes arrive. This patience is often mistaken for passivity. It is the opposite. It is readiness without desperation. Desperation is loud. Readiness is quiet. You also begin to understand why many men self-destruct when given freedom. Without structure, freedom amplifies weakness. Excess time, money, or autonomy only exposes internal disorder faster. This is why some men collapse after success. They removed external constraints without installing internal ones. Mornings are where internal constraints are built. This insight changes how you pursue goals. You stop chasing scale prematurely. You stop adding complexity. You refine systems instead. You ask fewer questions and execute cleaner. You stop optimizing for speed and start optimizing for inevitability. Inevitability is power. Men who lack discipline rely on pressure to move. Deadlines, fear, external accountability. Men with discipline move because movement is part of their identity. They don't need to be pushed. They advance quietly and consistently, which makes them difficult to compete against. Competition exhausts emotional men. It energizes structured men. You also notice a subtle shift in how people speak to you. Less instruction, more assumption, less checking, more delegation. This is not because you demanded authority. It is because you radiate containment. Contained men feel safe to rely on. Unsafe men are micromanaged. Micromanagement is not a leadership failure. It is a trust failure. Trust, again, begins before the world is watching. This leads to another uncomfortable realization. Many men are overcoached because they are under-disciplined. They seek mentors, frameworks, and guidance to compensate for internal inconsistency. Advice feels useful because it delays responsibility. Discipline removes the need for constant input. You begin to trust your judgment because it has been sharpened by silence and execution. Silence does more than clarify thought. It reveals motive. When the noise is gone, you are forced to confront what you actually want, not what sounds impressive, not what earns approval. This is threatening. Many men avoid discipline because it removes the comforting illusion that confusion is external. It isn't. Confusion is the absence of hierarchy inside the mind. Mornings establish hierarchy. What matters first, what doesn't matter at all, what receives energy, what is ignored without guilt. Over time, this internal hierarchy expresses itself externally. Your life becomes simpler, but not easier. Complexity disappears. Responsibility remains. This is where most men break. Simplicity removes excuses. When there is only one or two priorities, failure has nowhere to hide. Distraction is seductive because it spreads blame. Discipline concentrates it. You accept this trade knowingly. Another change becomes apparent in how you deal with people who attempt to rush you. Urgency used to trigger compliance. Now it triggers assessment. You ask yourself whether the urgency is real or manufactured. Most of the time, it is manufactured. People rush others to offload anxiety or gain advantage. Structured men don't absorb anxiety. They let it remain with its owner. This alone shifts power dynamics dramatically. You don't argue, you don't resist, you simply don't move until conditions make sense. This frustrates impulsive people. They reveal themselves quickly. They show you their leverage, or lack of it. Morning discipline trains this restraint. You have already practiced not reacting to discomfort. External pressure feels familiar and unimpressive. As this compounds, you stop explaining your boundaries. Explanation invites negotiation. You state decisions calmly and let silence do the work. Silence unsettles those who rely on emotional hooks. They fill it with concessions. You observe, you choose. Observation is another byproduct of disciplined mornings. When your mind isn't cluttered, you notice patterns others miss. Repeated behaviors, predictable excuses, emotional cycles. You stop taking things personally because you see structure instead of drama. This detachment is often misread as indifference. It is not. It is clarity without emotional distortion. Men without structure live inside their emotions. Men with structure observe them. This difference affects everything: conflict, negotiation, opportunity. Emotional men escalate. Structured men wait. Waiting forces mistakes. Mistakes create openings. This is why power rarely looks aggressive. Aggression is reactive. Power is patient. The morning is where patience is trained. You sit with discomfort voluntarily so you don't flinch under pressure later. Eventually, this becomes your default state. You wake without resistance, not because it feels good, but because resistance no longer feels logical. You've removed debate from the equation. The body obeys because obedience is familiar. Familiarity is stronger than motivation. Motivation fluctuates. Familiarity endures. This is also why relapse becomes less likely over time. Discipline is no longer something you do. It is something you protect. You feel the cost of deviation immediately, not as guilt, but as loss of sharpness. Once you've experienced clarity, you notice its absence. This makes regression unattractive. At this point, the morning stops being a tactic and becomes a filter. Anything that threatens it is evaluated carefully. Late nights, distractions, obligations. You don't reject them emotionally. You assess them strategically. Does this strengthen or weaken my position tomorrow morning? If it weakens it, it costs too much. This standard alone eliminates most low-value activities and relationships without confrontation. You don't need to cut people off aggressively. Your structure does it for you. Structure always wins quietly. You now understand why men who operate at high levels guard their mornings fiercely, not out of obsession, but out of respect for leverage. They know how rare uncontested time is. They know how easily it is stolen. And they know what happens when it disappears. They don't romanticize discipline. They depend on it. Dependency is the final inversion. Weak men depend on stimulation, comfort, and approval. Strong men depend on structure. One creates volatility, the other creates stability. Stability allows expansion. Expansion without stability collapses. This is why your progress now feels different. Slower on the surface, faster underneath, less dramatic, more durable. You are no longer chasing momentum. You are building gravity. Gravity doesn't rush, it accumulates, and everything eventually moves toward it. At this stage, something subtle but irreversible happens. You stop needing external reinforcement altogether. Praise becomes irrelevant. Criticism loses its edge. Even results stop being emotional events. They become feedback, nothing more. This is the psychological separation point, where identity detaches from outcome. Most men never reach this because their sense of self is still negotiated daily. A good day inflates them. A bad day destabilizes them. They are ruled by variance. Structured men operate above variance. Their mornings are identical regardless of circumstance. That consistency hardens identity. When the internal environment is stable, the external environment loses authority. This is why disciplined men appear unshakable. They are not fearless. They are insulated. Insulation is built through repetition, not bravado. You also begin to notice how little of life actually requires force. Force is expensive. It creates resistance. It attracts attention. Men who lack structure rely on force because they have no leverage. Men with structure rarely need it. They position themselves so that outcomes occur with minimal friction. This applies to work, relationships, negotiations, conflict, everything. You stop pushing, you stop convincing, you stop proving, you allow structure to do the work for you. People comply more readily when they sense inevitability. That inevitability is trained every morning. You wake, you act, you do not negotiate. Over time, this internal certainty becomes visible externally. Others feel it even if they can't articulate it. They adjust unconsciously, they accommodate, they defer, not out of fear, out of recognition. Another change follows. You become difficult to bait. Emotional hooks lose effectiveness because you no longer carry excess tension. Most manipulation relies on unresolved internal pressure. When pressure is gone, hooks slide off. Provocation feels transparent. Drama feels inefficient. This is why disciplined men are often accused of being detached. Detachment is simply emotional economy. You no longer waste energy reacting to low-value stimuli. Energy conservation is power. You begin to allocate attention deliberately. Attention becomes a currency rather than a reflex. You notice how freely others give it away to outrage, gossip, trivial conflict. You see how much life force leaks through unexamined reaction. This awareness makes you ruthless with focus. Ruthlessness is not cruelty. It is clarity without apology. This also changes how you experience time. Days feel longer, not shorter, not because there is more happening, but because you are present for it. Fragmented attention compresses time. Structured attention expands it. You stop rushing mentally even when circumstances move quickly. This gives you an edge most people can't comprehend. You have time to think while they are scrambling to respond. Thinking is rare under pressure. Pressure reveals preparation, and preparation is built in private. As this compounds, you stop seeking validation for discipline itself. Early on, men want to be seen as disciplined. Later, they want discipline to be unseen. Visibility introduces distortion. It tempts performance. Performance corrupts structure. True discipline is anonymous. This anonymity protects you. You are not burdened by expectations. You are not trapped by image. You are free to adapt without explanation. Others remain locked into who they've told the world they are. Silence keeps your options open. You also become selective about who you allow access to you early in the day. Access is influence. Influence before structure is contamination. This is why the first hours matter so much. Whoever reaches you first has disproportionate impact. You make sure that whoever or whatever reaches you has earned that position. Most men never earn this control because they never claim it. They allow intrusion out of habit. They confuse availability with virtue. They believe being reachable makes them valuable. It doesn't. Scarcity makes you valuable. Structure creates scarcity. This scarcity isn't artificial. It's a byproduct of priorities. When you know exactly what matters, everything else is naturally excluded. No resentment, no explanation, no drama. Exclusion becomes automatic. At this point, you also stop romanticizing rebellion. Many undisciplined men mistake rebellion for strength. They resist structure because they associate it with control imposed by others. They fail to see the distinction between external control and self-imposed order. Self-imposed order is liberation. The man who cannot control himself will always be controlled by circumstance. He may call it freedom, but it is drift. Drift feels light until it carries you somewhere you didn't choose. Discipline anchors you. Anchors don't move fast, but they hold against storms. This is why disciplined men survive chaos better. When environments destabilize, economically, socially, psychologically, they don't panic. Panic requires surprise. Structure removes surprise. You've already rehearsed discomfort. You've already faced resistance voluntarily. Voluntary hardship inoculates you against involuntary hardship. You don't become rigid. You become resilient. There is a difference. Rigidity snaps under pressure. Resilience absorbs it. Mornings train resilience because they are predictable stressors. You choose them. Choice changes the nervous system's response. This neurological shift is profound. Stress stops being interpreted as threat and starts being interpreted as signal. Signals can be used. Threats must be avoided. Most men live in avoidance mode. Structured men live in utilization mode. Utilization creates advantage. You also realize that discipline is cumulative but fragile. One indulgent morning doesn't destroy it, but repeated indulgence erodes it faster than you expect. This keeps you vigilant, not anxious, but aware. You don't drift because you know where drift leads. Memory sharpens discipline. You remember how it felt to wake scattered, to move reactively, to end the day tired but dissatisfied. That memory keeps you aligned, not out of fear, but out of preference. You prefer clarity. You prefer control. You prefer silence over noise. Preference is stronger than willpower. This is why your discipline now feels effortless compared to before. Effort was required only while identity was undecided. Once identity settles, behavior follows naturally. You don't force yourself to act. Acting feels like alignment. Misalignment feels uncomfortable now. This inversion is critical. Discomfort used to come from action. Now it comes from inaction. That is how you know the shift is complete. But completion is not the end. It is the beginning of a different problem. When you are no longer fighting yourself, the real world becomes clearer. Structures, incentives, power flows. You start seeing how systems are designed, not how they are described. You notice who benefits from disorder and who benefits from discipline. This awareness creates distance. Distance creates choice. And choice is where power actually lives. But this introduces another layer entirely, one most men are never prepared for, because with clarity comes responsibility, and with responsibility comes isolation. At this point, the separation is complete. You are no longer operating inside the same psychological environment as most men. Your decisions are not driven by urgency. Your identity is no longer negotiated daily. You don't wake up asking what the world wants from you. You wake up already knowing what you will take from the day. This is where loneliness begins. Not emotional loneliness, strategic isolation. When you live this way, fewer people understand you. Fewer people relate to your pace, your restraint, your refusal to rush or explain. Conversations feel shallow. Complaints sound repetitive. Drama feels theatrical. You are not superior. You are simply no longer synchronized with the noise. Most men need chaos to feel alive. You no longer do. This creates a quiet danger, outgrowing the environments that once defined you. Workplaces, social circles, Even relationships begin to feel misaligned. Not because they are wrong, but because they are built for men who need external pressure to function. You don't. And systems rarely reward men who don't need them. This is why power is often misunderstood. It isn't loud, it doesn't posture, it withdraws, it observes, it selects. It moves when the return is asymmetric and stays still when movement is wasteful. You've already learned the foundation of this through mornings. You've trained yourself to act without permission, to remain calm under discomfort, to delay gratification without resentment. That alone places you above the majority. But mornings are only the gateway. Beyond this point, discipline stops being the differentiator. Everyone at the top is disciplined. What separates operators from disciplined performers is access to information, to timing, to psychological leverage, to systems that compound quietly instead of visibly. These systems are never explained publicly. Not because they are illegal or mystical, but because they are useless to men who haven't already proven self-command. Without structure, leverage becomes corruption. Without discipline, knowledge becomes noise. Without silence, access becomes exposure. This is why real power networks are small, selective, and quiet. You don't join them by asking. You are noticed by how you move, by how you speak less but decide faster, by how you are never rushed, by how you don't need consensus, by how you are already prepared when others are still orienting themselves. The world is full of men who want outcomes. It is starving for men who can carry responsibility without spectacle. If you followed this entire monologue without resistance, without looking for motivation, without waiting for reassurance, then you already understand something most never will. Power is not taken in moments of intensity. It is accumulated through structure, patience, and discretion. And discretion is where the next level begins. There are conversations that cannot happen publicly, frameworks that cannot be shared broadly, psychological tactics that only work when the other side never realizes they are being used, strategic timing that collapses if spoken aloud. This is not self-improvement, this is positioning, and positioning requires containment. That is why access matters more than information, why proximity matters more than popularity, why circles matter more than audiences. If you are looking for motivation, this is not for you. If you are looking for affirmation, this is not for you. If you are looking for shortcuts, this is not for you. But if you are building yourself into someone who does not need permission, reassurance, or external structure, then you already know what comes next. Not everyone is meant to hear everything. Some men are meant to act quietly, move deliberately, and operate with knowledge that never reaches the surface. That is what membership actually means. Not a subscription, not content. Access. Access to deeper frameworks, access to uncensored analysis, access to strategic thinking that assumes competence instead of catering to weakness. The door is not advertised loudly because it does not need volume, it needs alignment. If you're still here, then alignment is already present. The only question left is whether you choose to remain outside, where information is free but diluted, or step into an environment where nothing is explained twice, nothing is softened, and nothing is wasted on those who haven't earned it. Those who belong will recognize where to go, and those who don't will feel uncomfortable and move on. That too is by design.